Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Inside Scoop. If you're not familiar with the Inside Scoop, it's a podcast dedicated to helping parents learn about the soccer pathways that would be available to their child if they lived in another city around the world. And this show is brought to you by Anytime Soccer Training. My name is Neil Crawford. I'm your host and also the founder. Now, we have a special one lined up, and I've said this many times. I am so intrigued by youth soccer professionals who have experience, who grew up in another country or are very familiar with another country's youth soccer system, and are also working and familiar with the U.S. youth soccer system, so they can add their perspective on the differences, and they can share their experiences in their home country. Because in a weird twist of irony, I happen to believe we learn a great deal about ourselves by hearing about stories from people from all around the world. Mike, welcome to the show. Guys, I have a special guest to introduce, Mike Haughton, who is a technical director of Bluffton Soccer Club. I said soccer club, Bluffton Rush, youth soccer club down in South Carolina. Mike, you're coming from us by way of Manchester, and now you're in South Carolina. So welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself.
Yeah, as you say, name's Mike Haughton. Well, originally from Manchester. I've been in South Carolina now about 7 or 8 years. Obviously interrupted due to COVID. And I'm the technical director at Bluffton Rush, the local club around like the Low Country, South Bluffton, and we're on the border of like Georgia and South Carolina, so real down south in the south of Carolina.
Yeah, so let's go to night school before we jump into your story, especially for our quote unquote newer parents or parents who are newer to youth soccer. What exactly does a technical director do, big picture, and what do you do on a day to day?
Well, obviously, I coach teams is part of my role, but also we plan out our philosophy as a club, our standards, our vision, and we make sure that I try and make sure that all the coaches have the same vision, so that all the players know our playing style and our philosophy, so that all the players get to have the same development strands that we as a club hold dear. And also on top of that, I do the coach education piece, so that all the coaches are mentored and get through their licenses, etc., so that our coaches are as good as they can be along their play, as long their own path, as well as
Okay. Okay. All right, guys, we had a little technical glitch. Mike's computer or phone or whatever he's on fell over, and now we're back. So, on a day to day basis, though, how do you ensure that the coaches in what they're doing is aligned? So, the way they're thinking, the way they're behaving, and what they're actually doing on the grass is aligned to you guys' overall philosophy and strategy.
Well, we hold coaches seminars and sessions, so that we get one of our teams on the field, get all our coaches around, and show them our playing style. I share sessions, etc., and each session should have like a topic and learning outcomes, so that at the beginning of the session we try and get our coaches to make sure that the players are told what their learning outcomes are for the day, so they know. So the session doesn't go from all over the place. If we're doing a defending topic for that 90 minutes or whatever they're on the field for, the topic is consistent.
Now, do you, at the younger ages, so I have a 2013, is that explained at the younger ages?
Once they're into competitive games, we have like a pre-academy, etc. It's not there. That's just all technical and getting them to understand the game and how to play it, basically. But once they are in competitive soccer, yes, we do start to get it into them early that this is what we do, this is why you do this. So they've learned some skills in the pre-academy, some techniques, and then what we do, we take that and say, right, this is why you've learned those things and where to use them.
Okay. And so then before we go into the oral history and you give us more about your background, I'm very interested in this, by the way. Give me an example of something that would be acceptable some places, nothing intrinsically wrong with it. And I'm putting you on the spot here, but you guys might say, nah, we don't do it that way. Is there anything you can think of? I know that's hard because or maybe it's not acceptable. I know it's hard, but I'm trying to think. So I can think about American sports where, say, basketball, they may not have their big man playing a certain way, shooting threes, or football, they may not have their quarterback running out of the pocket. They try to play this kind of way.
Yeah, so predominantly we coach like a possession game, so that, and what I don't like is teams, the goalkeeper gets it, they have either somebody big or somebody fast playing up top, and they literally just kick it and it's a running race to the other goal. Because the development of players then, I mean, you're virtually missing out 3/4 of the team because they're not getting on the ball, they're not learning anything about the game, really. What we like to do is put all our players so they're comfortable wherever they are on the fields, even under pressure at the back, in the midfield, or the forwards, so that they learn to deal with pressure and to be comfortable and find options no matter where they are on the fields, no matter what position they're put into, they can solve a puzzle, if you like, by getting out of there and getting it where we want it.
Yeah, and I'll conclude this portion to say, as I was looking at folks that I wanted to interview for going into 2025, and I am from South Carolina, so I heard a little bit about your club. I was very impressed with the level of detail you guys offer parents publicly about how you want to play in you have a presentation. I'll share the website. People can, if they're interested, they can go to it. You have a very nice presentation that I'm going to use my air quotes for people who are listening. There's not a bunch of fluff that says, "Hey, here's how we want to play," and it's bullet points of how you want to play that's very digestible for someone who hasn't grown up playing. And then and that's beside the actual field, like the schematic you have for the field. And then it's overlapped and it's layered on the various age groups and what you would expect those how that would kind of scaffold. And I'm probably butchering it. But the bottom line is, at least I got an idea of how you guys view the game and how you want to play. And it was tangible to me.
Yeah, we think it's important to be like transparent with parents so they know what they're getting, what they expect. And it's just about teaching everybody. We like the parents to know why we do certain things and what we do, and the more they know, the more they understand while they sat there. And then when they're at home, when the youngsters ask them questions, they may have an answer. It's just being that transparency to let everyone know what we're up to.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. And guys, I'm going to put the website in the show notes, and you guys can check it out yourself. All right. So let's go. This part is the oral history. Let's talk about your earliest memories of football. Did you play with any siblings? Did you play in the equivalent of grassroots at your local club? How did you academy stuff work? How did you get seen by City? This is an oral history of your youth soccer experience in England, Manchester specifically.
Well, back in the day when I was first of all, they didn't have academies back then. They had a thing called School of Excellence, etc. But you just started off, obviously, playing with friends on a park. And then the grassroots stuff in England, because England is a much more compact country than obviously over here. Every little area has a grassroots club. Every few miles is a grassroots club. So they literally are all over the place. And you just join, and it literally is, it's just a few pounds here and there. It's not like anything big because they just play on park fields. I'd say 90%. It's changing a little bit, but I'll go back to when I was there. It was all just volunteers and games. So that's how we did it. And then school, even from young school, right the way up to high school, played for everybody plus a club. And then my school was a good team. We had some good players that ended up going to various pro clubs as a young schoolboys. And what happened was I got onto we have county teams. So I had played for Tameside, which is part of Greater Manchester. So I was playing for Tameside. We played against like areas from Liverpool and Bolton, all over like the Northwest. And we played a cup final. And after the cup final, somebody from City came up and said, "Could I speak to your parents?" So I had to give the number to my father when I got home. The guy came round to the house and invited me into City to give it a go there.
So how old were you when that happened?
Around, it's a long time ago, but around 13, 14. Yeah, about 14-ish.
So back then, they didn't have academies as we understand them now. They were quote unquote city of excellences. Or did City have a quote unquote academy?
No, the academies came in much later. No, it was called a school of excellence, and they just had teams of. It was almost like the next step up from grassroots because it was coached by people from City. It was just 8 different age groups. It was loosely based around academy, but they didn't used to call them academies back in the day. It wasn't nowhere near as professional and as intense as it is now. The academy system in England is now huge. These were much more, let's have a look at these lads and let's see how they develop over the next few years. So it was nothing like the academy, but that's what there was at the time.
So when I hear the term, I've heard the term center of excellence is also a parallel program for, and this is modern times, for kids who are attached to the academy, but they're just not good enough to break into academy. Is that a thing, or did I misunderstand?
No, people do have that as well. Different clubs. So again, clubs. I mean, some people have dropped their academies. Some people have school of excellence. Some people run. For instance, City used to have something where they'd have what they call shadow squads. So if this is later on, not when I'm playing, I've moved forward to when I work there now. If we had like a U15 academy team, they'd have what they call a U15 shadow squad. So it'd almost be like the reserve players at that age group that they could keep their eye on. And it was just a way of spreading the net wider, basically, making sure nobody slipped through the net, or they had a better chance of nobody slipping through the net.
So when you play grassroots in your local clubs, how many days a week did you guys, quote unquote, practice?
But the grassroots, you just go to your local club a couple of times a week, basically.
And then you play a game on the weekend.
Yes.
And then how much did you, to the best you can remember, your mates, free play in the streets, just play?
All the time. This is, when I've spoken to people over here, it's the one thing that I don't see in this area. I don't know about all America, obviously, but in this area, you see, I always said, and it's something that's said in England quite a lot. So let's say, for instance, me and 3 or 4 mates go onto a local park. We make a field up like, I mean, there's an old saying in England, so jumpers for goalposts. You just put things down to be the goals and you start playing. So over the period of time on this park, there'll be some guys, maybe friends, turn up. So from 3v3, it becomes 6v6, 7v6, whatever it becomes. Then we literally used to do it all day. So over the hours, bigger kids would turn up, smaller kids, and it'd end up just a huge game going on in the park. But what it does teach you is, so if you're one of the younger kids, you didn't want to get roughed up by an older kid in the game. So it sort of teaches you when to pass, when to dribble, so the game was the teacher. It was like, hey, I've had enough of being kicked by these bigger kids, so I'll just keep passing it. And it gets your decision making. It gives you a little bit of, you get streetwise on the football fields during those times.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like in basketball, it's the same way. And the way we used to do it in basketball was they would pair you up with someone roughly your age. So you would play like all the way from maybe 10 up to 19, but you would be guarding someone roughly your age or roughly your skill. But you didn't want to, you wanted to be a smart player because you know your older brothers and the older cousins were going to give you a hard time.
Yeah, well, these games were just not, nobody was looking after us. It was just a bunch of kids on a park. And you know, some people would walk off after so many minutes saying, I've got to go home or whatever. So it was literally on and off, but just wasn't supervised by anybody. It was just learn to play while you're on this park.
So when you first started playing at City, and then we're going to go to coaching, how did you interpret it, especially when you put your modern cap on what it would have meant today? Like, how did you interpret it? Did you interpret this like, oh, I'm going to make millions of dollars if I make it?
No, that at 14, it wasn't really. And plus, back then, I mean, footballers used to win, but it wasn't like it is now, but nothing like it is now. No, it was just a dream because City were my family club, my grandparents, my parents. It was a place I used to go and watch. My dad used to take me to City every week to watch them. So that was a dream come true, no matter what the financial would have been. It was more about being a part of the club that I'd loved since being born, but you know, and it was just so exciting to be invited in there.
Do you recall your dad or mom ever talking to you in any way that you would consider that as an adult you would consider to be intentional about your quote unquote, and I'm going to use my air quotes again, soccer career? Hey, if we do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this kind of thing.
No, to be honest, my mum used to just get excited at games, but my dad was very level-headed about it. He was he was a parent, and I was quite proud to say it now, that just stood and watched me. We'd discuss it after the game, you know, if he thought I had a good game. But he wasn't vocal at all at the games. I know he just wanted me to progress. He was just, you know, he never thought about 5 years down the line or anything like that. It was just, well done, you're doing okay. What about if you did this a little better? And we would go on the park with a ball and he'd say, do this, and he would help me with certain techniques. But no, he was just, I wouldn't say living for the day, but, you know, he wasn't putting pressure on me. He wasn't sort of saying, in 5 years, you're going to be doing this or whatever. He was just, keep up going, you're doing really well, son. And that was pretty much it, really.
All right. And so if we put our visual cap on, what would I have seen differently from your grassroots practice to your city practice? Would I see it in city practice uniforms, facilities, grassroots? What would I see differently?
Probably just the standard of what you did. The grassroots stuff, again, it has come a long way since my grassroots, back in my day, was just a dad or somebody most likely, almost picking two teams, getting them to play. There wasn't much technical. So, and then you go to, I remember the first time I went to City and places like that, a lot of it was fitness. And as a young boy, you'd never done so much running in your life before. And then they did teach you some technical things and what not to do and when to do it and when. So it was like that because grassroots back in the day. I mean, I know we're going to jump forward a little bit, but grassroots now, when I see it back in England, has progressed massively than what it was. I mean, some of the clubs now are doing very, very well compared to 2030. Even when my boy was playing, like the grassroots stuff's come on a little bit in England. Well, quite a bit.
Okay, so now let's fast forward to how did you start? How did you get into coaching, and then how did you land a job at City?
Well, I was coming towards the end of playing for anybody. Towards the end, it was just playing with friends in local leagues, etc. And my knees were going, and I was getting to a certain age. So, and I had my son. So, I was stopping playing. Used to go and watch my boy play for grassroots and everything. And then he got into a local club called Denton Town, which was probably a step up from, but not much, but just a little step up. They were more organised, and it was a nice little run club. And just on the sidelines talking to other dads, one dad said, "Mike, why don't you get involved? Because you've done, you played there, and you know this and it." So at first I said, "Well, yeah, go on," and I got involved, and then quickly did my level 1 course, and I almost got like a bug for learning, because being in a classroom talking about football and getting my first qualification really lit a fire under me about being educated about the game. And so I carried on with my son's team, and I carried on getting further and further. I did my level 2, and then I just knew a couple of people who were part-time at City, and they invited me down a couple of times just to do some sessions with teams they invited in at the time, and slowly but surely was doing more and more there, but only on part-time basis. And then a position came up, and they said, "Mike, would you like to be it was football development manager?" So I said, yeah. So I took my UEFA B license, and was then involved full-time. We got a full-time job, and that's how it progressed through like that.
So, what does a football development manager do, or at least what did you do?
Well, back in the day, what it was almost broken down into few, because this was before Sheikh Mansour took over at City, and City weren't such a rich club, so we had to generate money. So we did. We always had the young kids coming in that we could pick up for the academy, and that was almost like grassroots. That was that they paid a couple of pounds to come into City's training complex and play and be coached. Then anybody we spotted could come into the full academy. I did international players that came in throughout the year with an educational piece, and then the City's training piece. So it was a little, and we did commercial soccer schools. So we took City out into the local areas during school holidays, and I got ex-players working with me that did make the first team. So I had ex-players helping me coach the commercial soccer schools. So it was all generating money for City, because at the time they needed it more than they do now.
Yeah, a lot more. And so when you coach, how would you describe their playing style before the Pep era?
Well, if you go back, obviously, Pellegrini was still doing it's very similar to Pep. Mancini was more cautious. I wouldn't say defensive, because we scored quite a few goals in Mancini, but it's just a bit different, still exciting. But the further you go back, it was more old-fashioned. Well, I saw him go up and down the divisions that much. They changed the style quite a lot. But it's slowly, once the club became what it is today, if you go back a few years, you could see it's changing into what it is today. Because, let's say, Haughton was Sven Eriksson came in, and he started off signing some quality players that do sort of fit in even with today's standards and today's styles. He signed Ilano, who's a Brazilian player, and he signed a few. He was signing good players and making City almost City Mark 1, if you like. And then Mark Hughes took over. Again, did it a little bit more. It wasn't quite on the same style wavelength. Then Mancini came in, and that's when we started signing top draw players such as David Silva, your Sergio Aguero's, and then it starts to morph into what we're doing now. It wasn't quite the same. It wasn't far off. We're very possession based. He was a little bit more direct with his attacking, Mancini. And then Pellegrini was brought in, and he was almost Pep Mark 1. He did, and he knew that Pep was going to be the next one. And he sort of he started to morph it into what Pep suddenly became into. Because in the 1 or 2 seasons that Pellegrini was there, we signed people like De Bruyne and stuff that would almost future Pep signings, but they got him in early before he even got there.
Man, that's interesting. I could talk to you forever about that. So let's fast forward a little bit. So did your son play? Your son played with the youth academy for some period of time, right?
He played. He played in like one of these. It was one of the first. It was a team. Wasn't the first. Like I just said about shadow squads and everything. It was one down, and he was playing there for a while. They went out and they did well. They played against City's academy team at his age group, and we beat them. So the team was a good standard, and we were always looking to get them. If not at City, was looking to get them elsewhere into the professional game locally. But I don't know if it was the fact that again, being at City was my son's ambition, because like I've just said to you, it's a generational thing in our family. And I think because he knew he wasn't going to make it at City, it was of an age when we started to talk about college and university and everything. And me and my wife took him to 3 or 4 of the best ones in England that do the sports stuff that he wanted to do. And we give him a period of time to think over the visits we'd done. And then was up sitting around the table having dinner one evening, and out of the blue, he just said, "I'd like to try America." And was like, "What?" So
where did this come from?
So we said, "Well, if you're serious about it, let's look into it." So it was lucky because we had a lot of the team he was in, obviously, and it doesn't happen a lot in England. He had a lot of footage of him playing. So we put some highlight reels together. We found one school in the north of England that did the American SAT exams. So we took him up there to do his SATs, and then put his results for his SATs and some footage and give it out to a few colleges that he was interested in. That's why he came over here.
So I want to dig into that a little bit, and maybe I'll invite him on. But let's take a step back and just go through the blocking and tackling of so this is how we're gonna, and then we're gonna be wrapping it up. We're gonna go through the blocking and tackling of what is like a City from your perspective in terms of what the kids go through. Then we're gonna talk very quickly about you coming to the States as a coach, and then we'll wrap it up with your thoughts on U.S. youth soccer, and then your thoughts on how that blocking and tackling that we're going to talk about. If you were explaining it to a parent, here's what's the same, here's what's different. So when I say blocking and tackling, to what you remember, how many days, and we can play around with the various age groups, but we don't have to go into detail with every age group. We're just trying to get a general understanding. How many days were kids practicing Or you could say it as how many contact hours were they getting in that academy?
Again, it does vary as they get older, but you definitely have 3 nights and then sometime at weekend to play. So you'd be having 5 hours during the week to start with, roughly, and then obviously games or whatever at the weekend. If there's no games, you'd have another practice at the weekend, and then slowly but surely it became more and more as you're getting towards, your 14s, 15s, 16s. It becomes every evening. So,
Now, hold on. So don't say that lightly now. You get into the 14, 15, 16.
well, yeah, it depends. What happens is then, like City, for instance, I know that they're very good now. They offer education now, so that when you get to 14, 15, and you're going to go to high school and such like and everything, if they will say you can go to this school and City and it's a pay school, so that City would pay your fees at a certain age, and they guarantee that. So if they guarantee you 3 years schoolwork, and for whatever reason you're not in the soccer program after a year or 18 months, that doesn't affect your education. So it gives the parents that peace of mind that, football's cut and thrust. If they find a better player, they're going to bring them in. So you, as a parent, you want that little bit of comfort where, okay, if he doesn't make it at City, that he's not going to get like thrown out of school, if you like, because they promise you to play. And then when they're at the school, you see what happens is they're allowed to be involved with City, having sessions in the afternoons, and so it goes. Once you get to the high school and above age, you're out on the field every day, and then they'll have obviously tactical sessions in classrooms, etc.
So you're going to be on the grass almost every day. Obviously, they're going to be monitoring sort of your workload. They're going to be tracking that, but you're going to be on the grass every day, and you're going to be doing your tactical analysis
Exactly,
and classroom work.
And they promise you your education at probably one of the top schools in the area.
Okay. Oh, and that makes sense. So, what about individual training? Do they do that? Do they frown upon it if someone is offering it is not part of City? The individual development plan. How does that work to your record?
Well, once you're in the academy, you wouldn't really have any private lessons, for want of a better word. You just wouldn't do that, because City will deliver, and not only City, most people will deliver small group stuff to players here and there. They do different types of sessions. See, they do, everything gets covered, so there's no reason to go out. And I know I don't know officially, but I'm sure it'd be frowned upon, certainly at some clubs, because they do cover everything. I remember City had people like there's a guy, real nice guy, who still works for Patrick Vieira. Actually, he'd come in and he'd do these sessions where it tested things, and I could talk to. There was strange things, but when you saw it happen, they were fantastic. They were technical sessions, they were touch sessions, they were almost fun. But what the players got out of it was fantastic. So they touched on everything. Christian was great at that. I watched many of his sessions, and he did funny little things, and it's hard to explain without seeing it happen. But it just improved them all. It was great. What he did was it was good what he was putting on.
So again, that's if you're describing City, let's say that for some reason my child is good enough to be on City's radar screen, and I come to you and say, Mike, I have an opportunity for them to go over there. They're 15. How would you describe the pressure that the child is going to feel, parents and that kind of stuff in the atmosphere? And then one administrative point, because you can answer both of them. This one really quickly. the contract length. What's a typical contract length around the age? Is it 1 year, 2 year, that kind of thing?
Well, again, it's as they progress. So they would start off with a 1 or a 2, and then it's how they think the player's progressing. I think, and I mean, I don't know every player because I wasn't, I was never involved in the contract talks. But you would certainly, look, for instance, when they're really young, you promise 6 weeks. I know but that's when they're real tiny. So they don't just drag them out of like the grassroots for a week and say, "Oh no, go back." They make sure that they're comfortable. There's no pressure. They know the players that are around. They get used to the faces of the coaches, etc., and what's going on. So they promise them, at least a 6 to 8 week little block so that they can, because you know what it's like. The little kids can be nervous and they're being taught by new faces and it's a new surrounding. So they don't just bring them in for 1 or 2 weeks. They make sure they've settled and they've seen them at the best when they're more relaxed. Then it'll go to a season, and then it'll go to 2 seasons, and then as you're progressing, and they said if you're really progressing at 13, 14, you may get a longer one. But if they see your long-term progress, but you're a slow developer, it's nothing's like set in stone, and people get different contracts at different ages.
And in terms of the real clear pressure on a player to perform and not be released, was that a palpable thing, or?
Only when it got to the stage of the year when there was obviously a cut-off date for 17, 18-year-olds. But again, they try not to pressure players because, like you just said, players with less pressure on them perform better. So they always tried to keep the pressure off them. But people always had in the back of their mind that date was coming. But what they didn't do, they didn't just say, right, I'm sorry you're not good enough, but bye-bye. They sort of said, listen, we've been in contact. So they would have had the full picture of you because you've been there. We've had a word with, Burnley, Rochester, anybody that may have wanted a player like you that's not quite at City's like level right now, because City now City winning the Premier League and etc. But even in the Championship or even the Division 1, just to keep you in the game and keep you as a professional soccer player. And what they do is, sometimes even writing a little, buyback clause if you end up progressing that much at the new club. But what they tried to do an awful lot was make sure that the people weren't just released and sent on the way and not have any support system. They always wanted to support them and try and get them into clubs at various levels of the pro game.
So, to the best of your ability, in terms of understanding what the coaches could and couldn't do, how much freedom does a coach have? And you can kind of like, it doesn't have to be a specific time, like when you were there specifically. It could be your body of understanding. When you're at a club like City, how much freedom do you have to handle your own sessions versus follow strict guidelines of what they want you to do?
You'd have guidelines without a shadow of a doubt. You couldn't just, because obviously, again, the idea is if they play up the ages. So if a number 6, for instance, was playing U15 and the U17s were either played up again, because that's what happens, or they had injuries, if they needed a number 6 or whatever, the younger one could drop in, and his playing style and the team's playing style would just be seamless.
So, and I understand that. Yeah, see, I'm mindful of your time. I want to invite you back on because I'm trying to get through so much. So I understand. So you're going to have guidelines, but did they do like an 80-20 rule where this is sort of what we want to get you through 80% of the session and 20% of the session, you can kind of do your own thing based on what we want to do? Or is that?
They don't want to be robots, but yeah, as long as, it's within the philosophy, you do get some freedom at at all the clubs. Well, when I say all the clubs, the ones I've spoken to people about, they don't want robots, but there will be session plans in a library sort of thing that you'll have on your laptop or whatever, so that you can see, you can adapt them a little bit. It's all still within the philosophy and the playing style, but yes, they don't want just robots walking around doing exactly the same. So you do get a little bit of freedom.
So now remember, I'm your cousin. My son is going over there. We're about to leave in 2 weeks. We got 2-week trial at Man City. And this is the final round that you're going to tell me about Man City before we move on. And you try to give me some tips. How does the uniform situation work? In other words, so that I can understand, do I get, like in the States, you take your uniform home, your parents wash it. Are they leaving the kit there?
Yes. That once they're in, like this becomes almost like very professional. They get everything washed, and all the playing kit and everything gets washed. It's just all the way down. Yes, it becomes very. You just take your boots and everything else you need for the day, and off you go.
I know you might have the shout team, but how many kids are on a quote unquote team? Say you 15, 16, 17 years old, 11 aside age.
They probably carry around 18 on the squad list. But like I say, they do move them up and down, and they do have that shadow squad at certain ages. So that they'd have to really be shining. But yeah, they'd have 18 or so. I mean, I know, for instance, like Guardiola doesn't like to work with too many players, but other managers do. I know other managers in the Premier League and in the Championship work with much bigger rosters. So again, but on whole at City, when I was there, I'd say that once they were 11v11, they had around 18 in a squad.
And then in terms of the type of the coaching standards, roughly speaking, and whether or not they're full-time or part-time, and how many of them on the pitch. So my child is 14. He's going over there. How many coaches are going to be on the pitch focused on his age group in any session?
Again, it would vary, but you'd have two main coaches. You'd have the goalkeeping coach. So that'd be per team. You may have, if they had an up and coming coach that they wanted, you may have a third coach there. You'd have two minimum plus the goalkeeping coach. You may get a third, like I say, if it's part of the coach's development, be at that age group, moving his way up. Because it's places like City, like we had to do personal development programs, so almost like every 12 months do something new. So you can't just stand still. For instance, I've never been a goalkeeping coach, but as part of when I was working at City, the FA and what they say, to keep this going, you need to have some sort of like course every year. So I did the goalkeeping, the FA goalkeeping course one year, and did the youth modules another year. There's about 3 or 4 youth modules you do in England, which is a new branch of, well, it's not new anymore, but it was a new branch of the coach's pathway. So places like City, and I'm sure lots of other places, keep on your toes about your development as well as the players' development. Like I say, we have to do something once a year.
So if you were to come to me and say, if someone said the standards of coaching at City are much higher than what you typically see at a normal club, say in the States, a non-amateur club or amateur club, even in England, how am I going to see a difference in standards? And generally speaking, what does that look like?
I think it's just, like I say, it's because of the experience of the coaches, the qualifications of them, what they're asked to do, what each club does for the coaches. I mean, like I say, as City, I thought, what they asked us to do was fantastic. It was like you just knew that you had to keep developing as a member of staff to keep it going, to get more knowledge. And you could go and watch all the other coaches at the older teams and the higher teams and everything else. So you're just you're like a sponge getting that knowledge in, and you just as an employee, the same as everybody else. You as an employee in any company, you have reviews of your performance.
Yeah, and then I'm doing a speed round because I want to pivot really quickly, but I find this so interesting. I might have to call you back and just do another part too. When I lived in England, it was very clear to me that, if I watch basketball, people play basketball, I'm from North Carolina, so this is our thing. So I could picture how the standards of basketball will be so much higher in the States. I can see it. So, and then I could tell the talent level. So if I was trying to describe it to someone, I would, I would have to say, hey, there are guys that can, and in high school, they can jump over your head and they can shoot 3-pointers at 50, 55, 60%. They can dribble with both hands effortlessly, this kind of thing. They don't get tired. They're so shifty. So if you're trying to explain to my 14-year-old what he's going to see in terms of the talent level at a city, how would you describe it to someone who hasn't seen it to the best of your ability?
Well, first
now, let me ask you one more thing. Soccer is so different than American sports, so it might be. I don't want to put answers in your mouth. It could be.
No, yeah,
it's not.
I think the biggest thing is the speed of play, the decision making, the movement off the ball, all these things that it's not just. I try and tell the players over here, like you can't all be, or on the ball all the time. You're probably on the ball for 2 minutes out of 70 or 90, depending on your age group. So what you do for the last 68 minutes so it's that movement, that speed of play, that speed of thought. How can I help the teammates out? Am I in the right position? If this happens, I'm in the right. How can I help him out? But what happens if this breaks down? It's the speed of thought and the speed of play and the decision making. I'd say they're the three main things. You can get some really good players who start to make bad decisions, not passing when they should, dribbling, thinking taking 3-ons better than checking 1-on and passing it. Just the speed of thought and the speed of play and just pass and move, not just pass and stand still. That sense of there's some danger there, so I best come back. And it's those three things, I think. It's the speed of play, the thought of the speed of thought, things like that are the main things. Obviously, besides pure technical ability, but you can have with people with pure technical ability can be on the same level, but one guy is making better decisions, he's thinking quicker. So they are massive parts of the game where you can see that somebody's developed better than others.
Yeah, and I can see that. So now the last couple of minutes, and this is going to be the speed round. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin you in the calendar 6 months later, man. We're going to have another conversation because it's just too much. So you come to the States. What are I'm actually doing a speed round, so we're not even going to get that much context unless you got to go there. If you got time, we can go, but I want to be respectful of your time. Right. What are your initial impressions? Like compared to what you saw in England, and how does the level compare to what you would see in a decent grassroots club and then at the academy standard?
Well, this grassroots is okay. I mean, where we are, there's no big city, so our talent pool is fairly small. But I've still been very impressed with the players we have around here, because obviously it's a small pool. We're not the only club fishing in that pool. So it does get a little bit broken up. But for a small, like I say, with no big, Savannah's in Georgia and Charleston's about 90 minutes north of us. So with no big cities any closer than that, I think the standard's good around here. It's okay.
But how would you compare the standard from what you've seen, very anecdotally, of course, to a decent grassroots club with a volunteer coach? and the academy standard? Like, what is it?
Oh, well, all
In
of
the UK, how would you compare a club? How, based on what you have seen, a decent club, a grassroots club, still with a volunteer coach, but at a higher level in the UK versus what you typically see in the States, from just anecdotally, and then
right.
how does all of that compare to academy standards?
Well, first of all, the grassroots round here is good. It's well organised. I love the way they do it. It's fantastic. Again, my biggest thing about standards is players in England just are a little bit more streetwise, a little bit more. They play a little quicker, and there's a bit more aggression. And that's just our area, so I'm not saying the whole of the States. A little bit more urgency and aggression's needed a little bit around here. The academy stuff, I've not really seen too many players that would. I'm sorry about being brutally honest. I've not seen that many that would make an academy. Listen, there's a few that if they went into the academy system and played for a while, they could bring their standard up. So there's a few knocking around. I mean, I went to the Dallas Cup before COVID, and there was a couple of American teams there that I was impressed with. So that's probably the biggest thing I've been to while I've been over here is the Dallas Cup, and sort of that the standard there was okay. It was, and with the right surroundings, some of those players could do well.
So when you came to the States, and this fast forward again to now, after you did the coaching, I know you have some other coaching experience, but just talk about being a technical director. How did your experience at Man City inform your vision for what you wanted for your club here in South Carolina from that technical director perspective?
I just wanted to try and educate the players to progress no matter where they were on the field. It's job satisfaction is to try and get that bit of potential out of somebody. If they were going to be a rec player, I'd make them a better rec player. If they were going to be a club player, make them a better club player, and get them to wherever their potential could take them. Get every ounce of that potential out of them by teaching them and putting them in situations where you say, right, get out of this, and they do learn how to make decisions quicker. And it goes back to what I talked about a minute ago.
But when you got to Bluffton, was it a situation where you got there and your initial impression was good, this needs to change, this is going to change, this is going to change, this is okay, we can tweak it? Or was it, everything's going good, we just need to execute? Like, what were your initial thoughts, especially based on that sort of standards as you would have been experiencing and been exposed to at City?
Well, I was never going to expect anything like Premier League academies, but when I got here, I was quite pleased. Even with clubs I've never worked with, like I said, there's in this area there. Hello, I thought I'd lost you.
I can hear you.
In this area, there's 2 or 3 clubs. Some that have, sort of rivals, if you want to call it that, but even they do some good stuff. So I was quite pleasantly surprised at what was going on around the area. So it's just more tweaking it and bringing a bit of knowledge to it that perhaps I thought this club could do with. And so, yeah, it wasn't like I didn't think it was a major overall. It was just, and I just think sometimes the devil's in the detail, and sometimes coaches and clubs don't pin players down, so they don't improve as much as I feel they should do, because you put a session on and don't step in and say, no, that's not what we want here. And that's why I try and get our coaches to nail down the detail about what the development is.
All right. And so, guys, final question. And what I'm going to do, Mike, I'm going to get people, when I post this podcast, people will ask questions, they'll have discussions, and then I'll share some of them with you. Then maybe I'll get you back on for another hour in about 6 months and stuff after the smoke clears. Let's
sure,
talk
no
big
problem.
picture. I always end with this. I always end with this question. You are in the running to become the president of U.S. Soccer, and the emphasis is on youth development in America. And they are saying if you get the job, you get a blank check. You can do whatever you want, and you're going to be able to bypass a lot of the politics. In other words, we're in this fictitious story, a state of desperation, and everyone is on board. They're going to do what you ask them to do. All the clubs, all the associations, everybody. What are your big pillars that you feel you would implement to help improve the state of youth soccer, assuming you think it needs to be improved in the first place? In
The
the
first thing I
US.
think, I'd like to simplify the pyramid. It just, and listen, this is no disrespect to anybody, it just seems to go off at different angles. There's no defined journey from top to bottom. And since I've been here, I've had so many leagues sprout up. I won't name them, but they all have different titles. And now this is the best league. Now this is the best league. No, I would just simplify things and ask the MLS clubs. Now the MLS clubs should perhaps start to put satellite centres out and about around the country to invest a little bit of money and say, right, here's a satellite centre for MLS club, and so that the clubs can still survive and show parents that it's still a good club to be at. Because you can't just keep giving your best players away. So, if an MLS club came around and said, right, here's the plan, it's a satellite centre, we fund this, we have the club and the MLS club, just a little bit of satellite centre type stuff going on. But I'd say the main thing is simplify how you get from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, and I would add, you simplify it, and then you make it as accessible while trying to keep some kind of standards, but accessible to, and I'm gonna use a corporate term, independent operators. So people who they want to charter, they're passionate, they just want one or two teams, they just can't do all the red tape and all the infrastructure required, but give them an opportunity to be on the pyramid and play their way up.
Yeah.
You know, maybe am I in how to say, am I in John Lennon territory? Am I dreaming?
No, that's how it's. There's ways you could do it, and I have a few ideas, but it's just simplify it. Like I said when we started this conversation off, I said how I went to play from my local club, my local school, to Greater Manchester, which I went to Tameside. Now, I know the US is much bigger, but couldn't we have a South Carolina? In fact, South Carolina's, but I know it's not big compared to other states, but for me, it's quite a big place. You could have North South Carolina, East South Carolina, South Carolina. Get state teams together, try and play against each other, and then you can get the best out of those three. For instance, form a South Carolina team. Hey, and why not go to Virginia or somewhere? And slowly but surely, you start to build the best players on the East Coast, for instance, and then start. But that's just one way of trying to get the best players without ruining the clubs. Because I understand that you can't just keep. But then they go back to the clubs, but they're representing their state. First of all, they're representing their part of the state. Then they're representing their state within the state. Then they're representing their state in other states, and then they go back to the club for every day. Other games, but just something where
challenge. Because I know some of our listeners are going to say, "Yeah, we have something like that." ODP, where the challenge is so diluted.
Yeah.
Because in our pre-interview, I said we call it classic. I don't know what they call it in South Carolina, but in North Carolina we call it classic, which is our U.S. Soccer, and then North Carolina Youth Soccer Association is the agent. Is the Association of Ministers. I love the infrastructure that Classic has, but the problem is, again, going back to what you're saying, you have all these parallel leagues, so everything is diluted. And then from a parent's perspective, who's trying to figure all this stuff out, we don't know what to make of it. I mean, my admonishment to parents is always look at what's happening in the training environment. Ask your child, are they happy? Are they getting better? That's going to tend to take care of itself, but it will still be nice to have an understanding. What does all this mean?
Yeah.
So I'll give you the final words on that.
No, that's it. I mean, I understand. And obviously to try and, you said without the politics, and that was my idea, without the politics. I know politics had come into it because clubs have to survive. You'd have club on club players going meeting each other at these. So it is a minefield. But the things you just said, your players have got to be happy. They've got to be developing. And if you do that, you can't go wrong, because the clubs should be looking for a way to get their players exposed to higher things anyway. Like, just one quick one is obviously Rush, because Rush is like a nationwide thing. We're just a small part of Rush. They have a Rush selective program, which is fantastic, I have to say. So anything like that, which exposes players to the higher standard, is got to be a good thing.
Absolutely. So, guys, my name is Neil Crawford. I'm the founder of Anytime Soccer Trading and also the host of the Inside Scoop. I just sat down with Mike Haughton, who is the technical director. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
The technical director at Bluffton Rush. Mike, it's you got so much information that I didn't even get through. I'm gonna scare you here. 1/3 of the questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pin something in the calendar and invite you back on, man. And we're gonna go a little bit deeper into your experience here in the States and continue that conversation. But until then, thank you so much for your time, guys.
No, I've enjoyed it.
All right. So definitely, I normally try to get somebody that I really enjoy, to have a lot of information like this. Come back in about 6 months after we get some questions in from the audience, and then just have fun with it. So good luck to you. Good luck. Have a great holiday. Good luck on the upcoming season. Maybe during the break, we'll reconvene again and continue the conversation. Guys, thanks so much, and let's get better together.